Hi guys, my name's Andrew, and today I'll be giving you a quick presentation about early careers in the food industry. It's a bit weird this year, kind of not doing it in person, doing it from my bedroom. Was the first time I've worn a shirt in about 6 months, so it's a very weird kind of time. October as I record this. So I'll just give you a quick background on my career and kind of a couple of other people's journeys, answer a few questions about kind of starting out in the food industry, and then hopefully there'll be a kind of Q&A in November time and I can answer more of your questions. So my background was I did a food and nutrition degree at Sheffield Hallam, I did a placement year, I did a graduate scheme, I got a real job, and then most recently I kind of started moving on. So my placement year was a very small family-owned business in Martin's Bakery, it was called, in Manchester. So it was a family-owned business, and they had 26 shops where they sold sandwiches, cakes, etc., which we made on site. And we also had a kind of wholesale area where we made Eccles cakes, shorty cakes for like the likes of Tesco and Harvey Nichols. We made some mince pies. We also made the world's largest Eccles cake, which you can kind of see down there. We had BRC on site as an announced audit, and only a technical team of 2. Which became quite stressful at times, but it also meant that you had a lot of kind of hands-on experience at a young age. After that, kind of in my kind of summers between years, I worked for a local company to home called Authenticate IS, who did supply chain mapping for the food industry. And this was actually an opportunity that I got through the IFST, through networking, through contacts. I met at the Spring Conference a few years before. It was close to home, it was self-employed style, so once I left to go back to university, I kept working part-time, which was great to get some money, while also boosting my CV and learning more about the food industry and how complex supply chains get when we get down to raw materials and how quickly supply chains branch out, and also the amount of businesses and contacts and food businesses that you just become aware of through spending time in the food industry, kind of those own brand guys and ingredient producers that you just don't see as an everyday customer. From then, I went back to university and I started my grad scheme afterwards. So I was lucky enough to get onto the Dockerill grad scheme in the technical area. It's 2 years, 1 year per site. My first year was at a site in Lincolnshire, pretty remote area, but it's where a lot of their sites are. So you are around a lot of other graduates. I was a process technologist, so kind of developing ready meals and from kitchen sample through to factory. There's a lot of complexity in terms of developing something that they make in the kitchen in a maximum of 1 kilo to then make it in 700, 800 kilos. It was an M&S exclusive site, whereas my second year was making for pretty much all of the UK retailers. It was a frying site in North London, where I worked in a systems coordinator, so looking after the HACCP, raw materials, allergens, etc. So that was kind of a very different change, but all about kind of developing and rounding your skills, and all whilst doing a kind of training program that they provide. Afterwards, I decided not to stay on. I wanted a new challenge. Positions I was offered didn't super interest me, kind of working as a QA supervisor, which would develop your leadership and kind of put you in a management position sooner, but kind of the shift work didn't appeal to me too much, and I just wanted a new challenge. So I went and joined a brand, Itsu. They have a lot of restaurants around London and also have created kind of grocery products you see on the right there. So we had a real global supply base, so we were buying from Korea, Japan. I went to Italy a few times for kind of a broth launch that we helped produce. All of the stuff is contract manufacturer, so we own none of the sites. It was all produced on our behalf as part of contracts. Technical team of 3, so again, back to a small team, a lot of responsibility. No real specialist on site, so kind of you have some guys come in to double check out what queries you have, but a lot of it is on your own head and responsibility, which is great for my personal progression, in my opinion. I was very close to the founder, Julian Metcalf, who also started Prep, so you kind of see how these inspiring people grow and kind of how they work. It's quite interesting. As a smaller company, as I mentioned, there's a very fast pace of turnaround. Brands especially, they love to kind of change artworks and MPD products all the time. And it was the first place I came across BRC agents and brokers. So similar to kind of BRC for manufacturers in kind of how it's set up, but there's a lot of clauses related to kind of transport and fraud, which is new, interesting. After this, so recently, as I mentioned, I moved on. I joined Sainsburys. I handed in my notice just after Christmas and joined at Easter. Didn't expect the situation that I came into, so I came into the business during lockdown, which was a challenge. I received my laptop at home, been working from home pretty much ever since. I went to the office twice earlier this year. However, we're in October now, so I haven't been back since, back to kind of working from home, which isn't the greatest, but it is how you get by in this kind of new world. I'm a product technologist for juice, smoothies, plant milks, pastry, and now also spreads. It's actually a maternity contract, so I thought I'd challenge to get a kind of foot in the door, and there was a position available as a year role, which expires in kind of January. With the discussion when I joined that there would be potential opportunities if I perform well. Being a big business, there's a lot of roles available. So if you do show well, there are opportunities for you to kind of jump up and experience different areas of the kind of food world. So hopefully I'll still be here come January. It's a new challenge and the final piece of the circle for me. So I've already worked in a manufacturer, worked in a brand, working from a retailer now. I understand how manufacturers work, where their challenges are, and also when they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes. So I think it gives me kind of a nice rounded benefit there. Great progression and development opportunities being a large business, but also very corporate, competitive, a lot of focus on project management skills and communication across departments. But kind of other people's journeys. My friend Katie, she started with a food degree in Glasgow, didn't do a placement year, went straight in as a spec tech for 1 year, and then moved on to be a quality manager in a haggis business for 3 years. She then decided she wanted to travel. So similar to me, she did an interim job for 1 year in Australia, and then came back to work with me in Itsu. Catherine, she was in my university class in Sheffield, did a placement at Statesides as a QA, so looking after kind of technical in the factory. Joined as a quality and complaints exec at Itsu, and then decided she wanted to work in MPD, where she's been since. My friend Pippa decided she wanted to do a master's, so she went back and did a master's, and then she's been working kind of meat sourcing and kind of new recipe developments in a business in Leeds. My friend James, who was actually my boss at Dockerill, he also went to Glasgow, kind of stayed through Dockerill from the grad scheme onwards, did the supervisor position I mentioned, went on to be a QM, dipped his feet in the water outside at Lidl, didn't really enjoy the environment and came back very quickly. Different businesses work for different people. I think when you've been in a long business a long time, it's kind of a shock to the system to try new things, and it can be positive or negative. Speaking of positives and negatives, here's kind of the things I feel about grad schemes. You are kind of guaranteed a contract for 2 to 3 years, and there's more than likely positions afterwards, as long as you kind of perform as they expect you and want you to do. Completion, you have a kind of presence, like you were the grad, you kind of have a kind of a status in the business. Normally they're competitive starting salaries with some good benefits, a lot of training, a chance to experience a lot of different opportunities you don't get in a kind of straight perm position. And often you're in a group with a lot of other grads. So with the food industry, you can be in some remote locations at times. So it's great to be around a group of people your age in the same industry and make friends. Negatives, they're very competitive, certainly to get on. You have to have some kind of degree of location and role flexibility normally, just because they have sites around countries and positions they want you to do. Applications take a lot of time if you're doing uni work. And as I mentioned, you may push you to areas you're not as interested in, but they're designed to kind of round out your skills, and that's why they do it. Assessment centres then, I'm not sure how they'll go this year with kind of COVID, but if you do go on ones, online ones or whatever, do your research, learn the company values. This works for interviews too. If you're in group activities, don't try to be the alpha. Be the person that communicates around. Say, Sam, what do you think of this? Sarah, what do you think of this? Kind of be the communicator the cog that puts everyone together. You've got to think star for those examples, especially on values. Give specifics, how you achieved it, what you thought of how it did. Be yourself. These kind of things are designed to make you be you. If you try and act someone different, they will kind of see through it. So kind of just be yourself. And then things you can do now, obviously we're in a weird time now, but get involved in societies, IFST, Nutrition Society. There's a lot of events still, online events, when you can get to things like Food Matters Live, IFST, get involved in competitions like Ecotrophilia. Networking is huge. Your university is a huge area in terms of there's hundreds and hundreds of alumni that have come through on your course in the food industry. Use LinkedIn. I think it's a must, especially now with kind of less face-to-face interaction. Communicate, speak to people. Don't be afraid to ask for a mentor and questions. It's very rare that people will turn you down or blank you. Keep up to date with food regs, current affairs. Brexit's obviously going to be a huge discussion point for the next year or so and beyond. And then think about your next steps while you're still studying. Do you want a grad scheme? Do you want to stay in the kind of a master's now? Do you want to just go straight into a permanent role? As I mentioned with IFST, there's those events, networking opportunities, loads of knowledge on the website. The student group is a great CV opportunity, so get involved. Anything to do with food when you're not working is great. And then the competitions like Ecotrophilia, where you can win money. So obviously there's no Q&A in person today. Hopefully there'll be an event in November, but I thought I'd just throw some questions out here and hopefully they help you. Does starting salary matter? In my opinion, no, as long as you have enough money for kind of living and eating and travel and perhaps a holiday. That's all you really need as a starting position. You're there to kind of get on the ladder. Obviously, a good starting salary is great, but I don't think it's the be all and end all. If the fit of the position should be what matters. And don't be afraid to move about if it doesn't feel right. If I do X grad scheme, can I only work for X? No, definitely not. There's loads of opportunities to move around. You give as much, if not more, to these employers than they give you, so don't be afraid to move around. Obviously at the minute things are tricky, so do your research, be careful. Hands-on versus foot in the door placements. So hands-on obviously is my kind of year, where you're very busy, you're doing a lot very early, or foot in the door, where you maybe at a bigger business doing less, but also having the opportunity to kind of get your name in there, kind of push you forward for grad schemes when you finish. Learning how the business works is quite useful. So they both have positives. Is there a limit on how many grad schemes I should apply for? No, in the amount of businesses. I would say quality over quantity is important. Make them specific to the business you're applying for and the role. I wouldn't apply for maybe more than 1-2 roles per grad scheme. So maybe the technical and the MPD. I wouldn't apply for 5 or 6 different kind of roles. And if you don't know what role you want to do yet, where can you learn about more roles? So there's great resources on the IFST website. I believe they were developed by the Nottingham University, kind of looking at all the different positions available, what skills you need, what kind of roles you'll be doing. So definitely check those out. But that's all from me in this one. I hope this was useful. Be sure to kind of ask questions on the Q&A if you see it coming through. Thank you.